Hello, I'm Sarah Coates, and this is Global Eye, your window to the world straight from Tel Aviv. Now, we're going to be travelling around the globe for the next hour together to give you every story you need to know. Well, on tonight's show, why are people in the States saying nope to having kids, and what's it mean for the future? We'll bring on an expert in that field. Well, Spotify is taking a cue from Adele for how music should be listened to. And San Diego is making it rain for motorists on a freeway after an armoured vehicle dropped its load of cash. And let me tell you, cops aren't happy. But before we get into any of that, let's start right here in Israel. What's the buzz? These are today's most trending stories. Well, thousands of mourners paid their last respects to Eli David Kay, the 26-year-old South African immigrant who was killed in a terror attack in Jerusalem yesterday. Well, Israel's Diaspora Affairs Minister speaking at the funeral saying Eli's story is a story of Israel at its best, vowing the government will do everything in its power to bring those behind his murder to justice. Now, a day after a terrorist linked to Hamas shot dead one Israeli and injured 4 others, the IDF is striking back today, arresting 50 terror suspects in raids across the West Bank, allegedly connected with an extensive Hamas terror network. Well, officials say the network was directed by senior Hamas members from abroad and had assembled an arsenal of weapons and explosives in preparation to carry out more attacks in the West Bank and in Jerusalem. Well, do babies make you aggressive, maybe mellow? Well, an Israeli study has found that the smell newborns emit make mothers protective and fathers less aggressive, with the research one of the first to directly link human behaviour and a single molecule picked up through smell. Well, there's a chemical that babies release called hexadecanal. It comes from their heads, and apparently it makes men and women behave very differently. So next time you're wondering why people are always sniffing babies, you know why. Oh, why is Israel so damn expensive? Well, if you've ever lived here or visited, I can almost guarantee that has come out of your mouth. From accommodation to food, drinks, and even clothing, just everything here is expensive. But why? Well, I have once before asked that question and I still don't know. So let's bring in Dr. Alex Coleman. He's an economic expert at Tel Aviv University. Doctor, thank you so much for coming in. Tell us, answer the question, why is Israel so expensive, even things that are made here locally? Expensive.
Yeah, well, first thing is supply, because Israel is a small country with many requirements like kashrut and things like that. So supply is not competitive, and demand is complacent. So people in the U.S. would drive for distances to find a deal, or they would cut out coupons out of the newspaper. Israelis would not do that. So if you have non-competitive supply, complacent demand, prices go through the roof.
It's, a real struggle street, I guess you could say, for a lot of people living here. A lot of people are choosing between, say, eating and heating in winter, just with these prices going up. Do you think this will ever change, or is this it? Is this what it's going to be like?
It has changed once in the past when Israelis discovered that Israeli products are cheaper abroad. So people discovered that, for instance, yogurt is cheaper. Israeli yogurt is cheaper in France and in Germany than it is in Tel Aviv. So this really blew people's minds. And then there was a big protest. And as a result, prices really declined. But as time passed, people forgot, people became complacent, and prices started rising again.
So tell me, surely you have some good advice, some good tips for people to, be a bit more frugal, to save a bit of cash and really help themselves live a bit better?
Well, one thing is particularly brands. Brands are problematic in Israel because you have only one company importing every product. So these products are really expensive. So what you should look for is parallel imports. Parallel imports are companies that are not the formal representative of the brand in Israel. They buy them in cheap countries, such as Eastern Europe or what have you. They bring them to Israel, so they are significantly less expensive. So you can see chains For instance, if you think about drugstores, you have drugstore chains that specialize in parallel imports, and they are significantly less expensive. So be mad and make the effort.
And tell me, Doctor, the government is planning on making housing a little bit more affordable, bringing, creating some new housing, etc. How realistic is this? Is it really going to do much?
Not at all.
Yeah, wow.
I mean, we've seen that in the past, and people sat on the fence waiting for prices to drop, and they were disappointed, so I do not expect that to happen in the near future.
How do you see the future of Israel? There are so many more people coming in, taking up so much housing. It's not really going at the same speed as the people coming in. What's it going to look like in 10, 20 years?
Well, the problem is that most of the land belongs to the Israeli government or the Israeli Land Office. And this office, being bureaucratic, is not anxious to sell the land. Normally, if it were a private enterprise, then they would sell land like hot potatoes. But because it's a government agency, everything is rusty and people operate very, very slowly. So you need a very nervous government to actually shake things up. And so the government would release land. Then you go through the bureaucracy. The bureaucracy in Israel is phenomenal.
Tell me about it.
So exactly. So it takes many, many years between the moment of, I'm going to build something, and ka-ching, you hear the money in that project. So government needs to cut this bureaucracy. Actually, the current government vowed to do that, but between vowing and actually doing it, there's a long distance. So you need to pray a lot. It always helps.
Yeah. Tell me about it. It's a never-ending battle here in the Holy Land. Dr. Alex Coleman, it's always lovely to see you, especially here in studio. Thanks for coming in.
Okay.
Well, the Jerusalem District Court building just north of the Old City was not built with the Prime Minister's trial in mind. Well, the halls are cramped and the foyer small, but again on Monday, the building was the scene of both a trial and a circus. Our senior correspondent Owen Alterman brings us the latest from the trial of former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and from the protesters out on the streets.
Another milestone in the trial of Israel's former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, with Netanyahu himself coming to court Monday to confront the testimony of Nir Chefetz. Chefetz was once Netanyahu's media aide, but he became a state's witness in the trial, able to tell the court about what prosecutors see as Netanyahu's misdeeds, and particularly the relationship between Netanyahu and Israeli communications mogul Shaul Elovitch.
I passed to Netanyahu a document from Shaul Elovitch, but Netanyahu shredded it and asked to schedule a meeting. Netanyahu whispered into my ear that Elovitch is at the entrance and to bring him inside in a way that others won't see him.
The relationship between Netanyahu and Elovitch goes to the heart of the most serious allegations against the former prime minister, that he helped Elovitch get regulatory approvals from the Israeli government in exchange for Elovitch giving Netanyahu positive coverage in a news outlet Elovitch owned. Chefetz explained how Elovitch made his requests.
Elovitch asked me to pass along the message to Netanyahu that the competition authority's approval of the Bezek-Yes merger would be expiring. And in order for the competition authority's approval not to expire, we have to sign the deal before the elections.
The Netanyahu trial is a long slog. Monday's testimony just another step in a process that could take years. Netanyahu denies the charges. And this saga still draws strong emotions. Netanyahu may be out of the prime minister's residence. The protesters for and against him are not off the streets.
It's a major deal between Israel and Jordan, the Middle Eastern neighbours, signing a declaration of intent on building a major solar power plant in the kingdom that'll be used to generate electricity for Israel, as well as power a desalination plant in Israel, sending water to Jordan. Well, the deal was signed in Dubai in the last few hours. All right, we're taking you out for a short break, but when we come back, birth rates in the United States are dramatically dropping, with more and more people saying kids simply aren't for them. We'll find out why. And bet you wish you were on this San Diego freeway this morning, but what are cops doing about so much looted cash? We'll tell you right after the break. Don't go anywhere.